So they realized that there was a lack of women. So he told the king, we have to do something. We have to bring women here.
You have to import some women.
Yeah.
The thing about importing women to Montreal is something we'll get back to later. It's quite a story.
Meet Palle Bo, a digital nomad from Denmark on an epic journey around the world. At the age of 50, he made a bold decision. He sold everything, his house, his car, his furniture, and set out with a quest to visit every single country in the world, documenting everything along the way. This is the Radio Vagabond podcast.
I arrived to Montreal, the most populated city in the French-speaking Quebec province and the second most populated in Canada, with 1.7 million in the city and 3.5 in the urban area. Only Toronto is bigger. But Montreal doesn't feel like a big city. On my first day there, a wonderful sunny Sunday, I rented a bike and went downtown to the beautiful old center of Montreal. It's a beautiful sunny day here in Montreal. I have rented a bicycle and made my way to the old town, and it's full of people, street performers, and the weather is, like I mentioned, very, very nice. It's a beautiful day, and you can really enjoy the city and the architecture of this Quebecan city. This year, Canada is celebrating their 150th anniversary of the Confederation. At the same time, Montreal is celebrating their 375th anniversary. But of course, there were Indigenous or Aboriginal people in Canada long before. I met one of them on the street in Montreal wearing traditional Indigenous clothing.
My name is Christian Beauséjour, French name, and my name in Indian, it's Magua, come from Bear Klan.
From Bear Klan?
Yeah.
For me, as a Danish guy, the whole thing about the Aboriginals in Canada, we heard about the Indians in the US and the Aboriginals in Australia, but we don't hear, I haven't heard much about the history behind when the French and the British came here to Canada.
First time, long time ago, we come from Maine, and we are friends with a French soldier. That's why the community speak more French. The opposite with Iroquois, and we are friends long time always, and we help for war, and the 16th period, the King of France, Louis XIV, gave a territory for us because we are nomad long time, and 1660, he gave some territory on Quebec. It's called Odanak, and it's just down of 3 rivers in Quebec. Yeah. And it takes 1 hour and a half to go from Montreal to go to my village. It's called Odanak. And we live there since that time. And that territory is very good for us because we are fisher before long time. Because we live always closer with the river, always, and we are good fishing.
Do you remember my talk from Chiang Mai with the Canadian couple Carolou and Michelle, what I call the first digital nomads in the world? They're originally from Montreal, and they set me up with some of their friends. Later, I'll talk to Anne-Marie, a woman that travels almost as much as me. But first, I'm going to lunch with Brigitte and her husband Bruno. Here we are in the car driving in, what is this neighborhood?
St. Lambert.
St. Lambert. And this is on the south
shore of Montreal.
Yeah. What kind of city is Montreal compared to the rest of Canada?
What is very attractive with Montreal is the multiculturalism you can feel, and people are really mixed together and enjoy to learn, and the curiosity is very high, creative, with people, like people like to get into new stuff and enjoy themselves, very happy people,
Yeah.
festive.
Yeah. What is the difference between Toronto and Montreal, other than the language, of course?
I think Toronto has really the focus on business and getting things done, which is complementary to Montreal, where people, they want things done too, but they can jump easily into the party things, or the creativity can take over, and it makes the city more festive. Like, I think that's a major difference, you know.
Do you feel that there's that the different areas are divided because of the language difference? Do you feel like a different country almost?
In a certain way, but I think Canada now is really building up as a one identity, you know. I think multiculturalism is really like bottom line of everywhere, even if you go in the West or in the Maritimes. It's just that the French part here is taking a major importance with the way people want to live their lives. You know, like the Latin roots make people easy to have fun.
Is it really? Do you think the Torontonian would say the same?
I'm not sure, actually, but
but of course, the people in Quebec are more intelligent, more sophisticated. Bruno is beside me. He's giving a thumbs up. J'approuve.
But you know, it's. I think Canada is a wonderful country if you want to cross from east to west. I'm sure you can find that.
I can't imagine how big it is, and
yeah,
getting in a car and driving to Vancouver. I spoke to someone yesterday that say that they will plan to do it in 6 days, and it's a long drive. It's almost from Denmark to Kenya, or it's like it's insane.
It's a huge country. It's true.
Yeah. So do you go a lot to the West Coast?
Not that much. You know, I've been the chance to go there twice. Toronto, we visit here, once in a while, and like we go down to New York. I mean, Montreal is very related to New York City. You probably heard about that. It always has been like connected together, these two big towns. But you know, one thing I think we have to say about Canadians is they are usually open-hearted people, and they believe in. As human beings, they can merge together and make difference. You know, like human rights, and they have a lot of flexibility in their humanity to accept people with different roots, culture, and I think this is something you feel in all towns in Canada. You know, like. So,
in a few words, what is the best thing about living in Montreal?
The culture.
The culture.
Yeah. I mean, you have the best part of the French, the English, North American, the Europe, and because we have a lot of immigrants and make the city diversified, you know. We are in touch also with Mid-Orient culture, you know, in terms of fooding, heathens, Afro-American, Caribbean. I mean, South American. I mean, you feel you can learn everything here in terms of culture.
Yeah. Is there anything bad about living here? That is the question you knew that was coming.
The long winter.
The long winter. Yeah.
Actually, the best way to enjoy winter is to do sport. You know, like cross country.
Or sleeping.
Yeah.
you like the bear.
Yeah.
You sleep all winter.
And you make love.
Thank you so much for a wonderful breakfast, by the way.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the maple taste.
Syrup, yeah. This episode is brought to you in part by hotels25.com. It's a website that helps you find the best prices on hotels and guest houses and hostels around the world. Hotels25.com. Best price guaranteed. So now I'm here in another house, having another cup of wonderful coffee here with Anne-Marie. Could you just give me a little bit of your background? You're Montrealer, born and raised here?
Yeah, I was born in Montreal in 1969, and I've always been living most of my life in Montreal area. And I'm totally into Montreal. I'm a big fan of Montreal, and especially these days because it's our 375th anniversary, and I'm so proud of that, and I'm so into it. But other than that, I feel that I'm like a world citizen.
You told me you have the travel bug, and you were giving that bug when you were very, very young.
Yes, my mother, she took my sister and I. My sister was 6 months. I was 6 years old, and she just divorced my dad, and she decided that she would go on a trip, like adventure trip, with two young girls, one baby and one young girl, in some kind of adventure, a road trip to Spain and Morocco, and
for the listeners, we're talking 40 years ago.
Yes, that was pretty unusual, and I think the family was pretty worried, but at the same time, my mother is very stubborn, so she decided...
They almost said, oh, she's lost it now. So what is going on here?
Totally. And I feel that if my mother, if she would have met someone there, and we would have been living there, because she was totally in the idea, in the concept of exploring, and the roots were not so important at that time for her. She wanted just to embrace the world.
Yeah. So we're not talking a 2-week package tour to a touristy place in Spain.
No, not at all. We've been everywhere in Spain at that time, and we were just like going from one city to another. And she didn't have like what a part of was planned, but there was also a lot of adventure into that.
Sounds like my kind of trip.
Yeah, and mine too. She really gave that to my sister and I. My sister and I were both big travelers, and
but your sister was so young. Can you remember anything from that trip?
Oh yeah, I remember Seville. I remember eating the flan. You know, this little dessert you have with there's like there's a bit of syrup in the bottom. It was so good, and I remember the smell of leather, because there's a lot of maroquinerie over there, and it smells that smell. It's in my mind. It's gonna be there forever. When I went back to Spain 2 years ago with my kids, I just got this smell back, and it was just like yesterday.
It is so funny with smell. I remember I was a bit older then. It was when I was in high school, and we went on a school trip to Barcelona and spent a lot of time in the Latin Quarter and narrow streets, and it smelled like sewer. You could smell the sewer, but we had such a great time. And when I came back years later, I was walking with some Americans. It was at a radio conference, and I said, "Oh my God, smell this! Yeah, it's disgusting. No, it's so great. It reminds me of my trip." You mean smell of sewer is nice? Yeah, but it was a trigger in my brain of good times.
Yeah, totally. But you know, smell, well, the sense of smelling is the longest, which is the one that has the most memory. So it's kind of somewhere, it's lying there, and whenever you go back to that smell, you just remember, and you get the mood back. The feeling that you have experienced back then comes back to you. Just like a song, but it's even stronger. The memory is stronger with the smell.
Anne-Marie Lefebvre is a business owner. Back in '98, she started one of the first dating sites in Canada, dating for people interested in sports, like rencontresportives.com. We'll talk more about traveling later in this episode. But first she'll give me a story about Montreal that I'd never heard before. We're going back in time when the French came to Canada. They were in desperate need for women in the New France.
Story of Montreal is a dating operation because the people from France and came here but after we call them colons in French, so they were here for a while, and after a certain point there was not enough women. There was like 300 men for maybe 10 girls, so that country wouldn't exist not long, you know. So Jean Talon was the intendant of Montreal back then. He told the king, we have to do something, we have to bring women here.
You have to import some women.
Yeah, so they talked about that to a lady that was here. Her name is Marguerite Bourgeois, and Marguerite Bourgeois was sent from France here to build schools. And Jeanne Mance was here to build the hospitals. So anyways, they realized that there was a lack of women. So Marguerite Bourgeois had her house and she was teaching school there, and she received women, many bunch of women from France. And actually there was a saying that these women were like prostitutes or not good women, but that's not true. These women that came from France, they were orphans. They didn't have money to get married in France. So the king would give them the money, and they would come here so they could find, with the money, they could find a husband. And so they came here by boat. And they were strong women because they had to face the fear of the Indians, and because there was a lot of fightings by then, and the cold, because here it was the houses at first they were not built to be in, like, to live here, because they would build it as they would build it in France, and it's not the same weather at all. So they were strong ladies and courageous, and so they are here. And after a while, Marguerite Bourgeois would teach them how to rule the house, how to cook bread, how to have the gardenings, how to take care of everything, the animals, and all the things you need to be a good Nouvelle France woman. And at some point, there was a meeting with the men. And so Marguerite Bourgeois would organize events, and she would have the men coming and pay their respect and introduce themselves. They would do a lineup, and they would just come here and say one after the other, well, I'm Artel. And
A speed dating,
totally. And after that, then there's the girl that would choose her husband. And she would choose him because he would not drink too much, and because he would be a good worker. He would be strong man. He would be tall. A good provider. And in a few years, the colony tripled. And then at some point, we became who we are now. But this is all because of this operation of match dating that was organized. And so it's a beautiful story.
Yeah, and it goes hand in hand with your professional career as well.
Yeah, totally. It's beautiful. It's inspiring.
Yeah. Nice. I like that.
And I kind of believe that the girls that we are have some
yeah, but this strong genes from these women came that's in the Montreal blood now.
Yeah, I love to believe that. And I love to believe that the people on my website, the ladies on my website, the girls have this in their genes, you know. And I kind of believe that if we would open a new world again, they'd go. Yeah. I would go anyways.
Excellent.
I would get on that boat anytime. Bring me the boat. I'm in. I have different reasons to travel. One of the reasons is to get inspired, because I work on, I have my own business. I run a dating service online, which allows me to work from everywhere. I don't have to be, I work from home when I'm here, but I can work anywhere around the world. I basically work every day, but not a long time every day. And I find it way easier to be isolated when I do that. It's just like writing a novel. It's writing a story, and in order to do that, I need to be really concentrated. So I don't want to be having to take care of the groceries, whatever, the usual task we have to deal with. So I go away. I isolated myself. I stay in the room for maybe when I wrote my business, my website, it was in Bangkok in 1998. I had my little laptop. I would travel with that because I back then I was a journalist, so I would cover different events, sports events. And when I came back, the website came along, and we built it. So now once in a while I need to do that again. I need to go, and I find it very useful to do it away, and I feel that it's so inspiring to be in another place where my antenna they're so awakened, so different from being here, from my usual path.
I totally agree. In fact, that was the reason I came here to Canada. It was to give a keynote about how traveling is boosting my creativity. And it's the whole thing about smells, like we talked about, but the sounds and even the light. And sometimes I go to a shop just to see how they decorate it, and that triggers some ideas for a radio commercial or something completely different that has got nothing to do with what I'm seeing, but that's just the different impressions and the sounds and the smells and the food and stuff like that.
Yes, and also being alone, because when I do those trips, the trips for work, I do it by myself, and when you're alone, you have a better opening to what's surrounding you, because you have there's no filters. You're just like into the environment, and you feel differently than if you would have a conversation with let's say your spouse or your friend, and it's totally it's very different, unique space to feel and to have creativity emerge.
Anne-Marie travels a lot. She travels alone for work or sometimes sport, like running and biking, sometimes with her sister and sometimes with her kids, both of them together and separately one at a time.
My budget for traveling is one of my main budgets in life, because I really believe that it's nourishing. I think that it's the best food I can serve my kids. Yeah. It's to make them open their mind to different cultures and different realities, and we do museums, we visit things, and since they're like. The first trip we did, I did just like my mom. I left with my two kids. They were 5 and 6. I left for 1 month with my backpack and my two kids, and we traveled for about a month in Europe. And it was about going to Iceland, so we would feel the nature. And then we went to France for the culture. So we went to different music festivals and theatrical festivals. And then the last part was there was also Scotia, because of the architecture, the old architecture. So that was the three topics of our reasons of our trip.
In the last 12 months alone, she's been to Cuba.
I went to Cuba to see the Rolling Stones with my friend. Oh. Yeah. That was a crazy idea. We were having wine. We were a bit,
let's go to Cuba.
Groggy. Let's say groggy.
Italy and Croatia with her kids.
After that, I took my kids for a month trip to Italy and Croatia.
Then Nice in France.
In October, I went to Nice
for a race and work on her website.
And I found this guy who's became a programmer for my business. So now I have this guy from Nice who works for my business.
In the school break in February, she always takes her kids on a trip.
And this time we chose the Washington, because we've been to museums. There's museums everywhere there, and it's all free. And my kids and I were big fans of museums, so we had a museum feast there.
Shortly after that,
I went to New York with a friend of mine. It was my birthday, and he offered me to go there to see a play.
Then a trip to Arizona.
I went to Arizona with my sister. And so we had a good time, a good sister bonding.
And after that,
It was New York again because I wanted to do a half marathon in Central Park. And I've decided this time I'm going to bring my daughter and my son on different trips so I get to have a special moment with each of them.
good idea.
Yeah, my son, and he was there for my half marathon with me, and we did biking around Manhattan, and it was beautiful weekend.
Then it was her daughter's turn to get a trip.
So we went to Miami for Asian festival.
Asian festival. Okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we would stand out.
Anne-Marie tells me that she could easily see herself going all in and travel full-time like me at some point.
I would do it right now if I didn't have kids. I very feel deeply that I'm a nomad. I don't know where it comes from. So I don't know if it's from my mother bringing us on trips when we were kids, or it's just a state of mind that is like that. I don't know. But I really feel that I could do it right now. And the only reason why I don't do it right now is because I have family obligations. But as soon as they are older, I don't feel that I need to have such a base camp. I could be really lighter in terms of material facilities and everything. I could probably do what you do now. Oh yeah, because I'm so much happier when I move. So much.
If you like this podcast, please subscribe in iTunes or the podcast app on your smartphone. You can see pictures, watch videos, and read much more on theradiovagabond.com. Palais can be reached for interviews and public speaking gigs on mail at theradiovagabond.com.
This is it. After almost 2 months in the eastern part of Canada, it's time for me to head south. I'm going to the Bahamas now, and I'm so looking forward to that. My name is Palais, and I gotta keep moving. See ya.